You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may not be bike racers, but we love it. The season has ended, but the stories haven't. After a short break, we are back to spew our thoughts on the post-season test, Liberty's potential takeover of MotoGP, KTM's woes, and some wild speculation. I am your host, Kyle Power, and today I'm joined for some of this wild speculation in the virtual shed by some of our usual reprobates. We have co-host Jules Seegers. How's it going, Jules?
What's up, Kyle? I'm trying to ease my post-season pain with some of the Ducati documentary-style episodes that they have put on the YouTube channel. If you haven't watched it, it's a good watch. It's called Dream On, and they follow Pecco Bagnaia in the final three races of the season. And I think they're showing quite a bit, very honest, so worth a watch.
Nice. I look forward to that. That is definitely on the list for over the Christmas break. We're also joined by smooth talking Texan Adam Rosales. How's it going, Adam?
Hey, pretty good. I am been on a few flights lately, but good. Feels good to be back finally.
You've been on just about every race all over the world, as usual. Like Adam goes to just about every race there is going. It's really impressive, the effort he makes to go to all the races. Another one he likes putting a lot of effort in, but on the musical front, is tyre-obsessed trumpeter Matt Trumpets. How's it going, Matt?
Well, you know, 'tis the season to make lots and lots of money. I mean, merry. 'Tis the season to make merry.
Absolutely. So Matt has probably been playing in ensembles all over New York.
I had my first niche internet micro celebrity sighting in New York City. Someone at a bar from an entire other country just recognized me.
Wow, that's amazing.
From the show, yeah.
Absolutely. Also from the MotoGP show, of course.
That's it wasn't from that other show, no.
Yeah, they're not the other one. Well, talking about the other one, we might as well move straight into it. So our first topic that we want to have a tiny bit of discussion around is after the season, a couple of days afterwards, with some no doubt sore heads and some nursed hangovers, was the post-season test. And during this test, we got to see some of the usual candidates, but on different bikes. So we had obviously the defending champion now, or the reigning champion, Jorge Martin, his first go on the Aprilia. Due to contractual reasons, I don't believe he's allowed to comment until the new year, so we didn't hear any of his comments. We saw Maverick Vinales and Enea Bastianini on their KTMs, which Maverick seemed to like his KTM an awful lot. We saw Bezzecchi on the Aprilia as well, and we also saw Marc Marquez in red for the first time. But the person who was setting the headlines, not that the times matter, was his brother Alex Marquez, who got his hands on the GP24 for the first time, having ridden the GP23, and he seemed to like it very much so. He said it turned better. He said like it's an improvement on the entry to the corner, and he's predicted he's going to have quite a strong year. I'll believe that when I see it. So Alex Marquez seems to be really quick, but he crashes more than his brother, which is quite which is quite an achievement. So I don't know, guys. Do we think Alex Marquez is going to be a thorn in the side of the front runners this season? Adam?
I think that he might have some pace early on, but typical, once they go back to Europe, he might drop off a little and kind of balance his way. I feel like top 5 might be kind of the best average he'll get, but I see the occasional podium, especially in the sprints.
Well, the thing that strikes me very much is that we saw him have a couple of really good races at the end of the season. And what we know from looking at his brother, what's really going to matter here is the 25 bike versus the 24 bike. If they have the same kind of teething pains they did in the 24 season, in the 25 season, then yeah, I could easily see him causing all sorts of trouble, even if he's not going to be a front runner or winning the same amount of races as his brother. If he's fast for the first 8 or 10 laps, as fast as or faster than, then he's going to be a problem for passing, for crashing, for taking people out, or for being taken out when you're trying to get around them, that they would certainly rather not deal with.
Yeah, true. And I think maybe this year, I can't remember who said it. Was it Pirro? I think it might have been Pirro, the test rider, has said the GP24 and the GP25 are actually really close. Whereas I think from the GP23 to the 24, they made a huge leap. I think with the 24 to the 25, they're closer. So maybe next year we'll start to see the satellite bikes and the customer teams maybe being quite a bit closer again, as has been expected the last couple of years. Just last year, I think, was a bit of an anomaly. I can never say that word, anomaly. I think with the GP23s being a little bit far off the GP24s. So that would be interesting. Marquez made some, Mark Marquez, that is, made some interesting comments because he had a brief go on the 24 and then mainly focused on the GP25. And he made quite an interesting comment where he says even if he had the GP24 last year, he didn't think he'd win the championship because he thought Martin and Bagnaia just did such a great job on that bike. I don't know how much of that is mind games already and being a bit over modest, waiting for the fallout. But both Mark and Pecco both said, Pecco come out and said that both him and Mark have pretty much the same comments about the 25 and they like it in the same areas, which is a great start for them to be working in harmony. So what else we saw? Of course, we saw our rookies. We have 3 rookies on it. Is it 3 rookies? Remind me. I think we've got 3 rookies. 5 rookies.
Yeah. It's
well done, Kyle.
How have I got that so wrong? I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, I'm mistaken. Sorry, it's 3.
It is.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of.
Nice work, Jules. Gaslighting all of us. Well done.
And that was me for the rest of the show.
Jules has had his Red Bull for breakfast. So, yeah.
It was a test we all passed.
Good. Well, I didn't. I fall at the first hurdle. But yeah, so we have Somkat Chantra who's replacing Nakagami on the LCR Honda. That's a tough job. Rookie jumping onto a Honda, that is a tough job. But he should hopefully do well. We have a Fermin Aldeguer who is jumping on the Gresini Ducatis. He's going to have a GP24 at his disposal, and he was actually the fastest rookie in this test in 20th.
I think he's going to be somebody who's going to be getting podiums right away. The way the Gresini team is, the way that they operate, their pace, I think that he's going to be kind of one of the wild cards throughout the year.
Yeah, that's good speculation because also his crew chief is Frankie Cadecci that we've seen was great with De Gea, Jules, and he was brilliant with Marc Marquez as well.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned him at all, I think, last season, but remember when Acosta was like the guy to watch in Moto2, Fermin Aldeguer was mentioned mostly in the same sentence back then, and Ducati were quick to sign him when Acosta went to KTM. But then he had a really underwhelming Moto2 season in 24. So he wasn't really talked about that much, but yeah, I agree with Adam. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do because he's feisty. He's an aggressive rider. He doesn't always make friends in races so far, and if indeed the 25 bikes have a bit of those teething problems like the Ducati 24 had for the first couple of races before they got on top of the rear tire, he could be surprising. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he can do.
I mean, did we not all love feisty rookie Pedro Acosta on the gas bike? I mean, there could be nothing better than another Acosta-like presence as a rookie, just making trouble for all the people who are like, can you not just get in line and wait your turn?
An overly aggressive Spanish rider, you say? Well, we've never seen one of them before, and they've certainly never caused any entertainment. So surely Fermin Aldeguer is going to be one to watch. Another one to watch on that is, of course, our defending Moto2 world champion, Iagora, who's on the Trackhouse Aprilia. Now, that's going to be a tough gig as well, but Trackhouse, I think we need to give them a bit of love. I think Trackhouse have done really well entering in as a relatively new team, running Aprilias, which they've been a bit up and down. And so yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what Iagora does. And of course, with the rookies jumping on the MotoGP bike at the test, it's not about speed. It's just about getting them comfortable, getting to work with the team as a big step up. As we've said before, previously, with like Pedro Acosta's going to have that now with the step up from the gas to KTM, even though he was on a factory bike, the same equipment. you do not have the same tools at your disposal, like the electronics engineers, your mechanics and stuff like this. And even Marc Marquez has said this, going from Gresini back into the factory Ducati team, how much of a shock it almost is when you have that many people around you. So this is what we meant last year when we were saying, Acosta in not in the factory team. It's the equipment may be the same, but the support you get is not, Matt. So this is like a shock for the rookies coming into MotoGP for the first time and just being almost overwhelmed with the amount of data engineers they have to work with.
Yeah, but you can also entirely have too much of a good thing. And just because you have all these resources doesn't mean they're going to be well deployed. And that doesn't mean they're even going to be helpful. They can oftentimes create more confusion than generate lap time for you. So I think for the rookies, it's really, like you say, maybe coming in at that level is actually even better because the team is going to be focused on the most important, the biggest places that lap time can be gained. And that's what, as a rookie, you really need focus on.
The thing that I like about rookies on a good bike and not just another LCR Honda is seeing a rookie on a fast bike. It's kind of a fresh person. They don't have previous experience on a Honda or KTM or something. They're going in with a fresh set. Those guys are usually pretty quick. Like look at what Acosta did on a satellite bike. And so stuff like that, this is a really good scenario. And I if there's going to be one Asian on the podium between either Samkiat or Ayagura, it's going to probably be Ayagura. And the dude's just got raw pace. He's just fast. And so I'm really excited to see him hopefully get a couple podiums in the sprints before he gets used to the tires.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you bring up Acosta here, but look at how much faster he was than people who've been riding a lot of MotoGP bikes over the years. We're all dismissing the Honda rookie, but he might just figure out how to ride the bike way faster than everybody else we've already seen on it. I mean, I would love to promise that as a result. I don't think it's going to be a result.
Yeah, exactly. Fresh experience just makes a huge difference.
But that will be the only bike he knows, and he will find, because he's a rookie, he will, without thinking about it, find the maximum amount of time that he can from the bike. And that could give Honda some fresh direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And with these rookies, and you've already said it, with bringing in a fresh perspective, but that they're going to be pushing really, really hard and maybe over the top, which for someone like Ayagura and maybe on the track house, considering Aprilia's main sort of riders were Aleix Espargaro, who I thought had pretty much emotionally checked out for most of the season, and you can show he still got it by seeing how awesome he was in the final round. And then you've got the absolute enigma that is Maverick Vinales, and you never really know what Maverick is going to turn up. So I think they'll be quite excited about having a young sort of charging fast rookie. Another one, because of course he's still got Fernandez as his teammate. I think he's really quick over a single lap, but can't quite put it together for an entire race, Jules.
And what's really exciting for me to look forward to is both track houses will be 25 Aprilias from the get-go. Like last year, I think it was Oliveira who rode the 23 bike for at least half of the season, and they will both be on 25 Aprilias. And we already saw in the second stage of the 24 season that Trackhouse had some surprising qualifying results, and sometimes in races be inside the top 10. They have a new team manager for the next season, and if they can decrease that gap and get into that top 10 on a more structural basis, it would be, I think, also for the Japanese motor racing fans, really good to have him up there immediately.
Yep, and he's a tough old boy, because I think, what round was it? Was it Mazzano? He high-sided during the season, in the championship season, and broke his collarbone or his shoulder, and then I think he broke his wrist, and then he come back pretty much at the next race and rode through the pain and did really, really well and stuff like that. So he's proven he can ride hurt as well, and that's a sign of a champion. And that's basically, well, that's a talent, you could call it that every MotoGP rider needs to, a successful MotoGP rider needs to have. These bike races are used to riding hurt a lot. So, Adam.
A bit off topic, but there's a bit of a Japanese rider resurgence because in Supercross and motocross, there's Joe Shimoda, Japanese racer, who did something similar this past season where he broke his collarbone and went back to riding 2 weeks later after surgery and was actually quick. And it was wild to see such a quick recovery because motocross is brutal on your arms, and that dude is fast and he's healthy now. So hoping he can start the season pretty good next month. But yeah, just a little sidetrack. Supercross is going to be really good this year.
Okay, that's maybe one to keep an eye out. I've never dabbled too much in following Supercross too closely. I've watched it, of course. It's amazing. It's pretty amazing to watch.
It starts January 11th. Saturday night races, pretty much weekly up until like April, right into the beginning of motocross or of MotoGP season. So it's something to watch in the off season. It's pretty cool.
Okay, that's a good one for our listeners. Let's all go and check out some Supercross. So with the postseason test. There are obviously quite a lot of other things going on, but there'll be some testing starting next year again, and we will be coming back with some off-season content for you. So we won't delve into that too much more deeply this time because we'll talk a bit more in the new year about that. So let's move swiftly on to topic number 2. And topic number 2 is Liberty Media taking over. So this has been hot in the press a little bit. So Liberty want to buy, I think it's an 83% stake in Dorna to essentially take over MotoGP, World Superbikes and World Super Sport, which this is going to mean, obviously Liberty Media already own Formula One. They their sister company owns Formula E. So and this takeover has, I think, quite rightfully been challenged by the EU on competition grounds, because if Liberty do take over MotoGP, and this is my understanding, I could be wrong, but that means they will control Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3, World Superbikes and World Supersport and their supporting classes. So basically that means they control all top-level motorsport on 2 and 4 wheels, apart from the World Endurance Championship. Matt, that surely cannot be healthy.
86%, it values Dorna around $4.2 billion as a corporation. But the issue here for the EU Commission that has been flagged up is the licensing of broadcast rights. And let me just lay it out for you. So Liberty has already said, no, we're not going to run it like a cartel. We're just going to, we would like an interest in that. But where the EU is concerned is not with how they're going to run it in relation to Formula One, but how they're going to run it in terms of the price they charge for broadcasting motorsports to third parties. And this is a real issue. And this is exactly the same issue that saw CVC having to sell MotoGP rights when they bought Formula One. And this is the same kind of issue that Bernie got Formula One into hot water with back in the late 90s, early 2000s with the commission, using control of those rights to get to unfairly bargain for who got to broadcast and who didn't.
Absolutely. And that is the major point, because that is the point that directly impacts us, the fans, the viewers. So in the UK, I think it's TNT Sports or BT Sports has the viewing rights. You can, of course, buy the MotoGP pass and stuff, but as TNT Sports is behind a paywall, if Liberty get complete monopoly of that, they can essentially, there's going to be no competition. They can essentially charge what you like. So there is, regardless of what they say, there is the potential for the viewing costs for us poor fans to go through the roof, because they can essentially charge third parties whatever they like to watch it. And I personally, I've got some pretty outspoken views on Liberty Media as a whole, but personally, I think this is a bad thing. You want competition. You want competition to drive the viewing rights down, which makes it, all round cheaper for the fans. So I think, Adam, the EU are right to be looking into this.
So I have a slight different perspective on the costs because I've been paying for the MotoGP.com video pass since like 2006 or 7, and currently here, at least here in America, the price for the MotoGP video pass is double the cost of F1 TV. And so, like, to your point, it's like, well, if it brings down the MotoGP video pass cost similar to what F1 TV charges, then that's kind of a good thing. But the big picture, yeah, I agree with you.
And no, I also being an American, I get F1 TV, and listening to my British friends complain about the cost of Sky now and things like that, and the complaints about how poorly the app works. I mean, yeah, F1 TV did not work great when I first got it, but it was essentially beta testing. It's really a great solution and very affordable. But honestly, when it comes to MotoGP, it's included with my Max subscription on some sub channel. And so I'm paying like $15 a month. I get to watch all the action and I can watch replays too. It's essentially the TNT broadcast. So the concern here is that they would go, okay, we're gonna double the cost of MotoGP, and there is no other top tier series that TNT can go and say, okay, we'll ditch this, but we'll take this series instead, because MotoGP and Formula One, that's it. That's your top level of sport, and it's a concerning amount of market concentration. Now, if it was Liberty's marketing, if they sold a stake in the marketing to Liberty in the same way the commercial rights are leased to Liberty from Formula One from the FIA, I would love that, because they have done a great job of making the sport more popular. The more people who watch, the better it is. The concern is always that they get involved on the regulatory side, because Dorna has done an amazing job with the regulations, and that is an apple cart I do not want upset.
And Dorna's done very good things for MotoGP, especially through the 2008, 9, 10 recession that they had with the manufacturers. They got manufacturers to stay committed to the sport with the CRT rules and things like that. And they've done very good things to keep MotoGP kind of sustained. But I feel like there's some things that Dorna doesn't do very well as far as promoting the events. Like, there's events throughout the calendar that are hit or miss with attendance. There's some events that do it right, like Le Mans. Le Mans 23 had the most attendance ever. And that's something that the local promoter does that I don't necessarily think Dorna has a full hand in, but they definitely help guide the way that the events are organized, run, promoted, ticket sales, and things like that. And that's where there could be some benefit from Liberty, because what they've done for F1, and I've attended a lot of these races across both series, and there's a pretty massive difference. And I feel like during the Rossi prime years, that was probably comparable to what F1 is currently, where sold out crowds at every event, things like that. And that just simply doesn't happen in MotoGP. COTA, for example, you get about 140,000 people on race day for F1. MotoGP, you're lucky to get maybe 60. And so it's a pretty significant difference, and that's kind of consistent across the calendar, except for a handful of races. And so I feel like with Liberty stepping in, I think it would help Dorna as far as a promotion and event organization management perspective. But you don't necessarily want all of that to just completely change MotoGP, because it is a good thing as it is, because the capacity is not the capacity, but there aren't as many people, and that's both good and bad, because you can access these events a lot easier. It makes it a lot cheaper. Tickets are easier to get. And overall, it's just kind of a more fun experience for somebody who wants to see track action compared to F1. It makes it very expensive, very difficult, and there's just a lot more logistics behind it all. And so there's good and bad about the whole Liberty kind of taking over and assisting Dorna.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my one major concern with Liberty. And apologise for our listeners to keep making the F1 reference, but this is very valid on this topic because we've seen a direct of what has happened and what is likely to happen to MotoGP. So when Liberty first took over Formula One, the first 2-3 years after the Bernie era, it was really good where they got all this marketing, this promotion, it was going good, and they were like, right, it's lovely now, stop. No, and they kept going, steamrollering, the sprints come in, and then for me, as like a lifelong fan of both series, I feel like they kind of sold the soul of Formula One just to try to get more money and people for the door, and they've modernised it in a way and made it more of an entertainment show than an actual sport, and this is the bit I'm really concerned. I'd like that first 2 years of Liberty, Matt, and their marketing to get some popular, but then I want them to stop and leave it before they sell it out quite as hard as they've done with Formula One.
Yeah, and that again, that gets back to what part of the sport we're talking about regulating here. Dorna seems to absolutely have their fingers on the regulations that allow for great racing. I mean, stunning racing. If you've watched Formula One and you've watched MotoGP, there's no argument about which has better racing. Just it's not even something you can bring up without being laughed out of the room, if I'm being honest. But the concern and the concern here is an overarching one. And what a lot of people may not know is that there's Liberty Global, there's Liberty Media, there's the Formula One company. Liberty has all been spun off this one essential company that was built up by John Malone. He was a chairman back in the 80s and 90s. He sold cable subscriptions to people, cable TV subscriptions in the US, and he's turned it into this multi-continent just behemoth. So the concern is he can control these different aspects of the Liberty Corporation because of his unique position as chairman. And the concerns that the EU cites here, and this is just reading into the factual record, so apologies for being boring, but they're concerned about foreclosing rival broadcasters, and I'm quoting from their press release now, in countries which Liberty Global is already active in. If you've got Virgin Media in the UK, that's actually a Liberty company. Anyway, Belgium, Ireland, and I think one of our panelists might be kind of concerned here, the Netherlands. So that is the main focus. The focus is broadcast rights, and the focus is the overarching control of all of these companies, having undue influence that they don't act independently and compete with each other.
Another thing that I kind of want to mention is that Dorna is very Spanish centric in their marketing tactics, campaigns, and everything like that. It's I'm going to say Spanish forward, if that makes sense. But one thing that could be the benefit to it is that they'll make it more international, and it might change to a primarily English speaking sport versus dominant by Spanish and Italian. And I think that could be another benefit. I'm just trying to look at the positive sides of something that seems almost inevitable.
Yeah, there is. And then on this Spain and the more European sort of feel of it, sort of European mainland Spanish, you look at the teenagers and sort of moped. That's why you got all the brands like Gas want to be involved and stuff like that. So you've got like sort of mopeds, and motorbike sport is huge. You go to Catalonia around, there's like tracks you can go out riding in the mountains around there and stuff like that, and it's really quite big. So if that does happen and it becomes more English speaking, we don't have a good relationship with mopeds in the UK at the moment because there's loads of teenagers and moped gangs. So hopefully we don't have a MotoGP emblemed teenage moped gangs. But it'd be interesting to see if this comes through. As Adam said, sounds pretty inevitable. It's going to happen with this EU investigation. It could delay this until May. So who knows? Just what we can only hope as fans is our viewing gets better, the sport gets better, and we don't have to pay twice as much for that. We all have some concerns, but who knows what's going to happen. Jules?
Yeah, just to add a bit to this conversation, and as Matt mentioned, rightfully so, the Netherlands, where I come from, they have Liberty Global broadcasting company, and for the last time to make an F1 referral, they had Formula One rights like broadcasting rights that Liberty Global broadcaster here, and they Liberty Global let them lose those rights to a streaming service, the Viaplay group, which some of the Scandinavian listeners will know. So they're not afraid to let those rights, television rights, go. But then also I should mention that this party charges quite a bit more money to the customers. So that's a fear rightfully there. But I agree with Adam. It would be good. And I think it seems to me that Liberty would be a lot more powerful financially to make MotoGP a more international and more exploited in a positive way sport. And I think it's not a coincidence that Le Mans had this great attendance, because they know how to throw a festivity around a racing weekend. And if you look at the Silverstone stands for the MotoGP race, for instance, it was such a pity to see that
It was
there
quiet.
was so much space there, while the as you said, the racing's been so good, and you just feel like there could be a better job done. And I agree with Adam. It just feels like Dorna are punching above their weight now, and despite the good job they've done, I'm in a way still optimistic about if Liberty got this.
Well, one thing we'll close the subject is, let's all hope and touch wood that we're going to have cheap and fantastic MotoGP for all. Hurrah! That's all we can ask for the new year. So, moving into the new year, we'll move on to our final topic, which is topic 3, which is KTM woes, and we'll finish off with some wild speculation. So I think everybody's heard the rather worrying news of KTM, the whole company, the group. They're $3 billion in the hole, which is, wow, that's spectacular. They're in the middle of trying to sell off the brand MV Augusta. They've laid off loads of staff already. There's some of their staff are not getting paid over Christmas, which is absolutely awful. And they're going to go back to lots of uncertainty in the new year. They've even laid off their test rider, who's a bit of an old MotoGP legend, Jeremy McWilliams, sort of long viewing members of MotoGP in the podcast. Everyone will recognise that name. They've even laid him off. The one people they haven't laid off, though, are the race teams, because of course there's naturally been lots of speculation over the race teams. There was even rumours coming out saying that the MotoGP project will continue, but they're not going to develop the bikes at all. That has been rebuffed or rebutted quite hard by KTM themselves. They're like, no, it's all going and continuing ahead, to the point that they actually did a private test at Jerez a couple of weeks ago. So they're all still ploughing on. Now, there's people questioning the ethics of this. If there's people losing their jobs over Christmas, is it right for them to go racing? But these brands live to go racing. They base their whole identity on going racing and their marketing. So if you look at it that way, it's important for these brands to go racing. Like KTM is very much a race-centric sort of brand, Jules. So, Jules, you've been reading some Austrian newspapers, I believe. What's going on?
Yeah, it's not like I do that for
just for fun.
But I was prepping this show, and we take things seriously here at Missed Apex. Yeah, I was just looking for the latest, because it's gone a bit quiet in the international media on KTM, and I was just looking for like what's the latest. And actually tomorrow there's going to be a first court hearing about where the people who want to give KTM 90 days to sort themselves out and to convince their creditors that they are going to get a part of their money, and that they are, so to say, worthy of handing them these 90 days time. And there's the mean thing about this, in my opinion. The racing team is, no matter how way you put it, it's a luxury thing. And as you said, there are about 700 or 800 people have been laid off already. There's people that have not had their salaries for November, for December, so not for Christmas. And will the people who have to judge can KTM get this time to sort themselves out, and to maybe see if the creditors get their money. And these creditors, there are hundreds of them. It goes from local governments to insurance companies to people supplying them with coffee beans. Seriously. So will they say like, yeah, okay, you can go spend money on your MotoGP project, which is not really the most important thing right now as people are losing their jobs. Or are they going to say like, yeah, there's no money going there. You can maybe keep it running with what you have, but no money goes there for the near future. So the words by KTM, like, yeah, we're picking up our development for the preseason test in 25, and it's business as usual. I really doubt that at this time.
And see, to me, that is the question. Have they sandboxed the investment in the race teams in such a way that the race teams can operate independently? Because if they haven't, then they're continuing to not tell the whole truth, not only to their fans, but also to the riders. And this gets to the heart of it. And I find this to be very interesting. If I was a creditor, I think what I'd really want to do is sell the whole operation off to a deep-pocketed corporation. Like we saw Force India sold off to the Strolls, or, I mean, I'd much rather that than the dollar or the pound that got Honda sold to Braun just to keep the thing going. But this is where we are. People are losing their jobs. Looks bad for KTM to keep the race teams going while people in factories are losing their jobs. And even if it's not a problem right now for them, it absolutely will be. We've seen this happen in multiple sports, multiple countries, when a manufacturer is shutting factories and firing people. Maintaining a race team at full chat is a real problem. And if I'm Pedro Acosta's management, I'm very concerned right now.
Right, so jumping the gun, let's move back onto some wild speculation about races, because we are a MotoGP podcast and not a business podcast after all. So, yeah, Matt, you mentioned a deep-pocketed company that might be willing to come in and spend it. Well,
what's
what would you
another
know?
Austrian company?
Yeah, what's another Austrian company with very deep pockets who likes racing, who are actually already technically linked to KTM? They do their aero. It's, of course, Red Bull. That was the first thing that popped into my mind when looking at this. I was like, hello, if Red Bull fancy having a MotoGP team, this is the ideal opportunity to swoop in and offer to bail their neighbours out. You could even call it Red Bull KTM rather than KTM Red Bull, or whichever way round it is. They can change it, and Red Bull can probably get involved. And probably from the Red Bull sort of perspective, you wouldn't want one of your sort of fellow, like, they're not even really a competitor. It's a technical partner that you've been partnering up with, and a fellow sort of business there. You wouldn't really want them to go under. So I'd imagine Red Bull would be propping them up. They can prop them up in all sorts of ways. I mean, they already do the aero development, your Red Bull F1 team, Matt, a little bit, but they could just not charge them for it, surely.
Yeah, and guess who can build the engine now, too?
Oh, Red Bull powertrains, maybe?
Bingo! They got a bunch of ex-Honda people there, so I'm just, it's not an impossibility. If they wanted to make Red Bull its own manufacturer in MotoGP, they could absolutely do that.
Thing is, though, it's not like you just have to buy the MotoGP outfit. It's a company with about 400,000 employees in Austria alone, and probably double that worldwide. And it's in debt for 3 billion euros at this moment. You'd have to buy a complete village of factories, of suppliers. It's like like Wolfsburg in Germany that's just built around the Volkswagen factories, and it's a bit comparable to that. So you're not just buying the outfit. You'd have to pay for a lot to keep all that going. And I wonder how willing Red Bull would be, as Matt rightfully referred to already. Like, how transparent have they been? Because last year around this time, they went into 1 billion euros of debt, and still at the same time, they acquired a company in September, still last September, while they were neck deep into debt already. That company has bankrupted in the meantime, by the way. And they signed Vinales, they signed Bastianini. I mean, if you act to your financial situation, you don't go sign those riders. You'd stick to probably Augusto Fernandez because it doesn't cost you anything apart from spare parts, probably. And Acosta's manager, during the end of the season, he referred to like, yeah, we signed in May and they said everything was fine and they were making millions of profit and we were going to be a championship team. And then in November, it all turned out to be a very different, and he wasn't amused. So it reeks of trying to cover things up and stick your head into the sand. And I don't know, if I was Red Bull and I'd have a bunch of negative publicity within your other motorsport already, I wouldn't jump into this, despite being the sponsor already.
Right. So the deal here is, if I'm Red Bull, I don't want KTM. I want the race team.
That's it.
And I will agree to make all their creditors whole. Now, I don't know what the valuation is on an actual race team, but I'm assuming that it's going to be somewhere between $200 and $600 million. And if you've got Liberty coming into the sport to promote it, well, I mean, look at what happened at Formula One team valuations. They could have actually a nice auction, I believe, and do well. But that's not the question. Because, rightly, we're not a business podcast. We're a MotoGP podcast. And what's the fun question here? The fun question is, what happens to Pedro Acosta? If it turns out KTM fully lied to him and he is a free agent, where does he go? Who pays the most money? And who gets kicked to the curb? That's what I want to know from all you geniuses.
Brilliant. That's what I wanted to get onto. We've done too much snotty business and boring business speak, but it is important and poignant to MotoGP, so it is important that we cover it. Thank you, Jules, for your Austrian newspaper surfing there. I know that must have been painful, but yeah. So
take one for the team.
Well done. So, Kate, just for the record, we're wildly speculating about Red Bull. That's probably not going to happen. It was just some wild speculation. That could be an option, might be a crazy option. But yeah, KTM, for all intents and purposes, are saying that they are carrying on normal. They might not be truthful, but they're saying they're carrying on normal. They're developing the bikes. They're testing. They've got their riders. All business as usual right up until 2026, they reckon. But we don't believe it that much. And yes, Matt raises a great question. We've got this prodigious talent of Acosta who's coming in, who I think is the next Marc Marquez and the next big thing of the sport. He can't go to waste. I'm going to put my personal opinion out there, and this is wild speculation again. If I'm Honda, I'm going to be gutting my bank account and giving it to Pedro Acosta. I'll be throwing everything at him to try and get him as the star of the future, to be our rider, to drag us back to the front. Because in my opinion, Johan Mir and Luca Marini ain't it. I think if they've got a chance to swoop in and snatch Acosta with a big money deal away from a shaky KTM, surely Acosta's management is sniffing around as well. That's exactly what I'd do. Adam, what say you?
I'm kind of hoping for a little bit more consistency. Hopefully Acosta has some good trajectory into the season, and this doesn't really bother him too much. But if it does end up going belly up, I just hope he has kind of a fallback plan and he's got a good management team right behind him, supporting him.
Thing is, Acosta went to KTM this week, reports came out, and they had eased him, and they had assured him. It said, and that report made me think of Mohammed Al Sahaf. I don't know, he's the internet meme of the Iraqi defense minister that said, like, oh, there are no Americans at the Baghdad airport at Gulf War II. Oh, then there are no tanks here. And then in the background, you could basically see Baghdad being run over, you know. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Of course, you're going to invite Acosta over and you're going to tell him, it's all fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to be developing. But indeed, if I was Acosta's manager, I would be like putting some word out to the various teams. Like, so how secure are you guys for 2026?
Where would you be? What doors would you be knocking on?
Obviously, the Ducati. But I sincerely, I do hope, like Adam says, like, it's not going to go that way, because we don't need everyone at Ducati. We could really do with Martin at Aprilia, strong Ducati riders, but then also a third brand to really take it to the world title fight.
So I love that you bring up by far the most entertaining speculation we're going to have, Ducati. But let's for a moment focus on alternatives, because I know Kyle has loved Marquez and Honda needs Honda needs to come back, and they've shown some signs of life. You know, the internet meme where you're poking the thing with the stick. That's like, Honda, show me a lap time. But the reality is, if you are going to have to bail on KTM because KTM is going sideways, why are you not looking at Yamaha right now? Which is throwing the kitchen sink. It's throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks. And they began to have some like real results at the end of the season. And they're the only ones I'm aware of with a brand new power unit coming. Which
and a new
could
team
be,
principal.
it could be a game changer. I don't know. I mean, that to me is a more realistic bailout for him. But obviously, the two that you'd really want to go to would be Aprilia, which had some real results. But you have Martin there, or Ducati, which obviously will have the best bike. And to me, the discussion is, if you're Ducati, well, you just kick the current world champion out of your team to get Marc Marquez in, and here is the generational talent of the future saying, oh, hey, hi guys, would you be interested in my services? What do you do if you're Ducati?
You basically, you go to Grassini, you said, here's a brand new factory bike. I don't care what you do, boot whatever rider, and we're putting a Costa on it. Basically, we have seen teams do this previously, like private teams, like move people around. Well, how Rossi entered MotoGP, for instance, on Honda in special one-man team and stuff like that. We have seen it before, so that's what I'd be doing if I had Ducati. Like, with someone like Acosta, someone like a talent like that comes along, you do whatever means necessary to get them in your team. But from a fan point of view, I really don't want to see him on a Ducati. I really don't want to see that. Jules.
Or a Honda.
I'd like to see him on a Honda because I'd like to get him in. I'd like to get Honda back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to go to a satellite team when you come from a factory KTM? Will you
bring
go
up
to
a good point,
Grassini?
Jules.
But speaking of Honda, if I were Honda and Acosta comes onto the market, I would splash crazy cash to get that guy on the bike. And there's got to be someday when Honda comes good again and all things get sorted. I mean, that would be great. And we were talking about this in the chat earlier this week. Like, I mean, it could even mean that Repsol comes back to Honda and everything will be good and great again, like in the early 90s.
The unicorns and rainbows will return. I mean, I think I could speak for all here. The ultimate best solution here would be KTM sort their stuff out and they stay, because KTM are huge for MotoGP. They've made a huge investment. The bikes are great. Look at them in like Moto3, they're massive and stuff like that. They've really helped us. So it would be a travesty, I think, for MotoGP as a whole to lose KTM to come out. So we wish KTM well. We wish everyone there, and we hope that all goes well. But we do like to wildly speculate. So assuming KTM are going under, I reckon Honda. Adam reckons anywhere he can get him. Matt, you reckon Ducati?
No, well, I mean, to me, the question is, if he goes to Ducati
Honda, yeah.
and he has to be a factory team rider, who do you get rid of? I think that's like easily an hour worth of discussion right now.
That is another off-season content show. And talking of which, we will be coming back soon with lots of we've got lots of off-season content, if I can get my words correct, to come out. We've got some good shows about previous rivalries. We have had several requests to do a show for the bike curious and four-wheeled only fans. I know we have a lot of fans that don't like four wheels, but we have a lot of fans from the main who are from the four-wheeled world and would like to get into MotoGP world. They just find it all a bit daunting. So we are going to do an introduction to MotoGP for the bike curious from the four-wheeled kind. So we're going to do that thing, which probably wouldn't be a great listen for our regular listeners, but we'll try to get some more fans into sport. We're going to do our own Liberty Media moves. We've got some rivalries. I personally want to do a show about the epic injury comebacks and some of our favourite equipment and bikes, who we might have a very special guest lined up for one of them. So we will be having lots of off-season content coming your way soon. So last tiny bit of wild speculation. We're gonna be putting this in. I don't think Yamaha will go for Acosta, even if it's available, because they have their own superstar. They have Fabio Quartararo, which I think they're pretty happy with, and he seems to be long-term committed to them. So I think they're happy with Fabio, and they'd like to return to the top with him. So Honda, on the Honda rides, we never mentioned it in the pre-season test. Johan Mir has been pretty outspoken. He is not happy with Honda and their lack of development, and also apparently coming out now, Zarco, who was the top Honda for quite a lot of the year, was actually has just been said by his team, have come out and said he's very good public facing and tries to be positive, but behind the scenes he was very, very frustrated at how bad the bike was. So that's interesting. So I wouldn't touch him with Yamaha. If I'm Honda, I'm throwing all the money in the world at him. If I'm Ducati, I'm not going to bother. It can only be Honda, surely. Is anybody going to disagree and tell me I'm wrong?
Yes.
Off you go.
Yes, I mean, Honda is not someplace Honda is my last choice if I'm Acosta, because they're a comeback story. And he is a right now talent. Aprilia, Ducati, Yamaha, and a pinch. Assuming that KTM goes fully under and doesn't get taken over by someone with the resources to run the team properly. That's what I see.
That's fair, and that sounds like the most horrible bit of logic to end on. We had wild speculation and a bit of solid actual logic and thinking and use of brain. So I reckon we'll end there. Thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to send us any feedback or tell us how wrong we are or how stupid our wild speculation is, you can write to us at mrapexmoto@gmail.com. That's mrapexmoto@gmail.com. You can also go and follow the podcast on Twitter, which is at mrapexmoto. Go and follow us there. Go and send us some feedback. We may just squeeze another show in before the Xmas break, but probably doubtful. We'll probably be returning in the new year with the aforementioned off-season content that I said. So thank you for riding with us this year and riding pillion and being with us for our first full season as a podcast. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. We've thoroughly enjoyed it having you all along, and we've thoroughly enjoyed it reading your feedback. So thank you very much. Have a merry festive season and a very merry MotoGP muss from all of us at MotoGP Podcast.